In the mid-20th century, European society was recovering from damages of the Second World War, the cruelty of the Nazi death camp, and the fear brought about by the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki created the circumstances for the explosion of an intellectual movement known as existentialism. An entire generation was forced to confront the human condition and the anxiety surrounding death, freedom, and meaninglessness. Jean-Paul Sartre, being one of the most important figures in existentialism philosophy, wrote many works on the topic of existence and meaning. His novel Nausea is an important piece in the contemporary literary philosophy. It expressed some of his philosophical attitudes through the troubled life of an introspective historian, Antoine Roquentin, and his struggles with the realization that he is an entirely free agent in a world devoid of meaning, a world in which he must find his purpose and then take total responsibility for his choices. Alberto Moravia, a major figure in the 20th century Italian literature, also explores similar themes in his novel La Noia. The book tells the story of a writer Dino who is unable to find meaning in his painting career or in his affair with a cold, detached young model named Cecilia. The problem at the center of the book is Dino's search for fulfillment and his relationship with reality through possession, money, and sexual relationships in a hypocritical bourgeois society. The nausea of Roquentin, the boredom of Dino, and the indifference of Cecilia are all symptoms of an existential angst with different sources, and these feelings are not resolved. Even today, they still haunt anyone who ponders upon the meaning of existence. Sartre's philosophical novel Nausea is written as a diary of Antoine Roquentin, a 30-year-old man who has been living in a fictional French seaport town of Bouville for the past 3 years, working on research for a biography he's writing of an 18th century French politician, Marquis de Relevance. He lives in solitude, without friends or family, and spends his time observing people around him in cafes, eavesdropping on their conversations, and occasionally engages in conversations with the self-taught man about certain topics such as humanism. He takes on the writing task as his life mission to give meaning to his existence and to escape from the burden created by his consciousness of his existence. Eventually, he realized that writing about history doesn't help him deal with his state of presence in the world and decides to abandon the biography, which he deemed as a meaningless project. He begins to shift the direction of his attention and hope that he and his former girlfriend Annie will get back together again and that their love will cure him of his nausea. However, when he goes to visit Annie, she tells him that she has changed and needs to move on with her life. This rejection plunges Roquentin into crisis, for his existence seems even more repulsive to him. He ultimately resolves his philosophical crisis by deciding to take on the creative project of writing a novel, which he feels will be an antidote to his nausea. Nausea to Roquentin is a sense of revulsion at his consciousness of his own existence and of the existence of the people and the object around him, a sensation of sweetish sickness in contemplating the absurdity of life. It is both physical and mental. It exemplifies a philosophical exploration of the nature of existence and the challenge faced by an individual who becomes conscious of the fundamental absurdity of life. Moravia in his book La Noia talks about the neo-capitalistic alienation through the narration of a 35-year-old painter Dino about his life and his reflections. Dino comes from a bourgeois family with a rich mother who he doesn't love and whose wealth he loathed. Boredom, for him, è propriamente una specie di insufficienza o inadeguatezza o scarsità della realtà. He tries to resolve this feeling by picking up the paintbrush, but his career as a painter is not successful. In the book, we never get to see his paintings, but for an empty canvas, which serves as a metaphor for his career, his relationship with Cecilia, and with reality. He gives up painting at the start of the narration, after the death of Baristrieri. An old painter who has a studio next to his meets a young model, Cecilia, who was Baristrieri's lover and the subject of the old painter's nude paintings. Dino and Cecilia started a relationship that he calls love in his narration, but it's obvious to the reader that the relationship lacks emotional connection. Later on, as Cecilia finds another lover, an actor by the name of Luciani, we can see Dino's attempt to possess her through a sexual relationship and eventually money. This relationship is filled with jealousy and possessiveness, which suffers from and contributes to his sense of boredom. Dino's boredom stems from a deeper existential crisis. He questions the meaning and purpose of life, feeling disconnected from the superficial, affluent social circle that he came from. He yearns for something more significant and tries to search for it through an artistic approach. When the search was unsuccessful, he tries to fill this immaterial void through the possession of Cecilia in their relationship. This boredom, as Moravia puts it, essentially is the product of alienation. That is, the interruption of the relationship between man and reality, and therefore between the artist and the material, and if you prefer, between the subject and the object. The Cecilia that Moravia created is precocious, indifferent, and has an air of detachment to her. She's a part of the new generation, born in a very different economic situation to the one of Dino's, the post-war neo-capitalistic society, so her mentality is different. She doesn't suffer from boredom like Dino, and she seems generally very passive. In her relationship with Dino, she's always on the receiving end of Dino's interrogations, and often answers coolly, if not coldly, with yes, no, I don't know, whatever you want, and never poses any questions. When Dino asks her about her father's sickness, her response to it seems too calm, too remote to be coming from a caring daughter. Ma tu pensi mai alla morte? No, non ci penso mai. Neanche quando vedi tuo padre così ridotto? No. The same goes when Dino asks her about what her mother is like. Tua madre che carattere ha? Come buona, cattiva, calma o nervosa? Ma non saprei, non ci ho mai pensato. Ha un carattere quasi asi. Per me è mia madre e basta. This goes to show that she doesn't contemplate the meaning of life or pay any particular attention to the details of the world around her. Unlike Dino, she is blissfully ignorant about the suffering caused by existence, and therefore is not affected by boredom. The indifference keeps her at a distance from everything around her and every event that happens in her life. It shelters her from the consequences of being aware of herself and her existence, but also makes her unable to create a true connection with reality and with the people in her life. Boredom and nausea are both reactions to the contemplation of the human condition and the meaning of existence or the lack thereof. We can also find similarities through the journeys that the characters take, since both of the characters tries to fill the mental void through material things and artistic pursuits in general. When these attempts fail to give meaning to their lives, they move on to relationships with others and try to seek meaning from there. Sartre, in his book, uses a metaphor of a glass of beer to show Roquentin's reflection on the meaning of existence. A glass of beer is a nothing, but the object around us serves a meaning to their existence. It is easy to justify the existence of a glass of beer. It's a container for beer and has a handle for you to grab it. However, a human being does not possess any inherent value or identity. These meanings, in essence, need to be created by the individual through their consciousness. This is what the Sartrean philosophy describes as existence precedes essence. Moravia also uses the glass of beer metaphor in La Noia as a reference to Sartre's Nausea. Other than its original meaning, in Dino's explanation, the metaphor also refers to people, to Cecilia, to how he sees his relationship with her. But there are also differences between the feeling of boredom and nausea and how the two books approach these existential themes. Nausea takes a more philosophical approach with Roquentin's sense of nausea. It is an existential anguish triggered by his deep introspection and the realization of the fundamental absurdity of existence. Whereas Moravia focuses more on the psychological and emotional aspect of the feeling of boredom. Dino's boredom is portrayed as a deep dissatisfaction with life. He perceives his life as repetitive, monotonous, and devoid of excitement or genuine emotional connections. The mundane routine contributes to his growing sense of ennui. Existentialism, the confrontation with anguish and despair, is a philosophy of our age. Sartre's Nausea was first published in 1938 and Moravia's La Noia in 1960. The society we live in today is not the same as Relevance or Dino's, but the concept of nausea, boredom, and indifference still hold relevance in our current society. With geopolitical tension, environmental crisis, and a global pandemic, our society is filled with uncertainties, and these conditions pushes those who think to continue to reflect on alienation, existential anxiety, materialism, and the search of meaning. In both books, the writer addressed a character or the masses who lead an empty life, who moves through a routine, mechanical existence year after year, almost as if not really living life, but rather be dragged by it. This creates a contrast to the pensive protagonists and constitutes the society that the protagonists criticize. In Nausea, Sartre wrote, "They have dragged out their life in stupor and semi-sleep. They have married hastily, out of impatience. They have made children at random. And then, around 40, they christen their small obstinacies and a few proverbs with the name of experience. They begin to stimulate slot machines. Put a coin in the left-hand slot and you'll get tails wrapped in silver paper. Put a coin in the slot on the right and you get precious bits of advice that sticks to your teeth like caramels." Many people have no definite experience of their own desires or wants, and have painful feelings of powerlessness. People may know what they should do: study, get a job, fall in love, get married, raise a family, but it's soon evident even to themselves that what they're describing is what others expect of them, rather than what they themselves really want. Living life without a passionate cause and feeling powerless to do anything effective about our lives or the world we live in leads to the experience of emptiness. In such a case, one soon gives up wanting and feeling and becomes apathetic as a self-defense mechanism. To escape from feeling nausea or boredom, one chooses to feel nothing at all. This is the modern indifference. Like Cecilia, one is detached and alienated from everything and everyone around them. As social media has become a major part of our modern lives, alienation from reality could be simply achieved by immersing oneself in online contents, video games, or the artificial world they've created. Capitalism and hustle culture created escapism for people to keep busy all the time as a way of covering up anxiety. Consumerism offered an option for false fulfillment through possessing material products. People get a pseudo and temporary sense of aliveness by being in a hurry and consuming merchandise, but without actually being self-aware and confronting the difficult questions. The experience of the modern human will still be one devoid of genuine engagement and purpose. Nausea ends with Hokantan going back to Paris and starts writing a different book that tells an adventure instead of history. Sartre also spent many paragraphs detailing his new transcendental experience, where he momentarily finds solace and meaning in the presence of a chestnut tree and its roots. The ending can be seen as an affirmation of the possibilities of finding meaning and beauty even within an absurd and seemingly meaningless world. However, it suggests moments of transcendence or glimpses of meaning do not provide permanent solutions to existential questions. In La Noia, the novel ends with Dino lying on his bed in the clinic after crashing his car into a tree, staring at a cedar tree outside of his window. He realizes that his attempts to escape boredom and find fulfillment are ultimately futile, and there is an inherent emptiness in his existence. The ending highlights the existential predicament of the human condition, where the quest for meaning and escape from boredom can be perpetually unsatisfying. However, the ending can also be seen as Dino's self-discovery. he realizes that genuine fulfillment lies beyond superficial distractions. The two books invite us to critically reflect on the nature of our existence, the pursuit of meaning, and the impact of social structures on our well-being and sense of fulfillment. Maybe through reading the struggles of Dino and Roquentin, we can find certain resonance or courage to face the absurdity of our existence. As Sartre expressed through the words of the self-taught man, "You are too modest, monsieur. In order to tolerate your condition, the human condition, you, as everyone else, need much courage." The next instant might be the moment of your death. You know it and you can smile. Isn't that admirable? In your most insignificant actions, there is an enormous amount of heroism.